What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Dog Talk with your host, Holden. Glad to have everybody here today as we get rolling on with another show here. We don't have a lot to talk about this week, but nonetheless, we still are going to have a conversation because there are a few things that have happened since the last time we spoke a week ago. I told you guys that more than likely we would probably only meet and talk once a week, and that is true. But with exception to that, I have decided that next week I am not going to do an episode unless a lot of stuff drops. Obviously, since the last time we talked, a lot has happened. A lot has happened in college football. We had the Heisman Trophy ceremony. Transfers are heating up. Bowl games are about to get started. That may be a reason that I do jump in and maybe at least touch on a bunch of these bowl games that get started. Technically tomorrow, if you're listening to this, more likely it would be today, the day that you're listening to this, if it's at least Friday starting off bowl season. So there is a good bit that will be going on, but we've had quite a few things kind of happen since the last time we talked. So that's going to be a lot of what we're going through in this episode, and I'm gonna slowly kind of ease into this thing. The first thing was obviously Saturday. We did have the Heisman Trophy ceremony, and at this point, oddly, the Heisman Trophy ceremony feels like it was 3 weeks ago already. It's been just kind of that kind of week. Really is kind of the only thing that you can say about it, honestly. But the Heisman Trophy was this past Saturday. Stetson Bennett was in attendance for that. Coach Kirby Smart was there as well. It was fun and cool to have a Georgia player there representing again for the first time in a very long time. Obviously, will be the first one to actually win it since Herschel back in the 80s. So big deal there with him being there. Unfortunately, he does not end up winning. Obviously, anybody who's listening to this, you already know that. Caleb Williams did end up winning. The one funny quote that I will say Caleb did say was, "Yeah, I'm standing up here at the podium winning the Heisman Trophy, but you guys get together the college football playoffs." So credit out to that at least. I think a couple of weeks ago when USC played like the last game of the season and they won, I was like, okay, and there was a specific play where I said, Caleb Williams just wrapped up the Heisman right there. Then that was before they went and played Utah and lost in that game. So some things have happened since then that might make you think he's not necessarily deserving. But regardless, that happened. It is what it is. I'm not going to harp too much on it or try to dive too deep into why he should or why he shouldn't, or why Stetson should or why he should not. Stetson ended up fourth in the rankings. As far as the rankings went, I think he was just below C.J. Stroud as far as for the Heisman. So, again, very deserved of him going. We talked about this last week. Even if he doesn't win it, again, it's an honor for him to go and be honored in that way because I think he did deserve that. As much people wanted to give him so much crap about him going, and it's like, guys, he didn't call anybody and say, hey, let me go to New York. He was invited. It's just like getting invited to a party. It ain't up to you. You're not the one that sent the invite out to yourself. A group of collective other people sent an invite to you. It's not your fault you were invited, and so many people were jawing at Stetson and saying, oh, you don't deserve to be there, all that. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? Leave it alone. Seriously. And that's kind of where I'll leave that. I mean, the kid was invited. Get off of his shoulders. And that goes to the same people who say, oh, the top 4 teams in the country are not in the playoffs this year. Get off of it. It's over. It's set. Forget about it. You're not the best team. Be the best team next year, and you can be in that top 4, and you won't have to have this argument. But until then, don't lose 2 games in a football season. Because at this point, losing 2 games in a football season don't matter. Now you got another year that's going to make a difference, but in a couple of years it won't. You can have probably 3 losses and you'll be in the playoffs. But I digress. We'll talk about that when time comes. Now, transfer portal has heated up something serious. There are so many transfers in the portal. This is something that I don't know exactly what needs to be done. We had a feeling coming into this when the portal opened last week that there was a good chance a lot of people were going to go into it, and there's a good chance, obviously, a lot of kids are going to get picked up. But it makes me very curious with right around the corner, the early signing day period being there, December 21st. It makes me very, very curious What is this going to look like for these high school recruits? Are you all of a sudden, is the recruiting that you're doing going to have a lot more focus on the transfer portal? Guys who are experienced, guys who maybe you thought about getting from high school and it didn't work out, and wherever they went it didn't work, so now they're trying to come to you. I don't know. I don't know exactly what that looks like moving forward, but it's an issue. It's an issue. There's no way around looking at it and saying, listen, I put this out right now. If you transfer, so be it. It's your choice to go where you want to be, whether it's to be happy, whether it's to make more money, whether it's to further your career. I will not judge you for it. But that does not mean that there is not an issue when you have over 1,000 guys entering the transfer portal, and then you have that much, if not more than that, trying to come in from high school. All of a sudden, you run out of room on these big teams where these guys are trying to go. You run out of scholarship room. You run out of opportunity for those guys, and all of a sudden, there's high school guys who are really good high school players who are sitting there going, okay, well, I didn't end up getting picked up by a team. I've got to walk on, and now I've got to pay my way. And there's some of those that'll do that, but then there's also some of these transfer guys that are going to get stuck in the portal, and they're going to be sitting at their house going, okay, what do I do now? Or going and enrolling at a college and, you know, just putting in work there, but they're not getting a scholarship for it. So it's wild out there right now. There's some big names still floating around. I don't know that Georgia's picked anybody up yet. We talked about this last week. Wes Kirby, he talked about this last year, that when all this transfer portal stuff opened up, Georgia's preparing to try to play for a college football playoff game and then the national championship after that. So Kirby did not have a very heavy focus on it. Now, he did come out and he did say, listen, we talked to a few guys. We recruited a couple of those guys, and he laid out the parameters for what it takes to be a guy to be able to come to Georgia. It's not just what kind of a player you are. It's your character. It's all of the above that Kirby kind of went through, and he was like, this is what we look for in a guy. Can he match our culture? Does he fit our program? All of these things that you have to build up and have that resume to be able to come to Kirby and for that to be something that Kirby's going to look at. And he said last year there were a few guys that they did go after, and unfortunately it just didn't work out. So it's not like Georgia wasn't going for it. I wasn't too sure exactly what the deal was last year, considering Georgia was the only team in the college football at all last year, as far as my understanding of D1, was the only team to not go out and get anybody from the transfer portal. Not a single guy, and then they turn around and do what they've done this year again. Just incredible to see what they've done. But I think that will change this year. I think there's a few guys. I've even been reading where a few guys have come and visited Georgia. And I told you guys from the start of me doing this show, I'm not very big into recruiting. You're not going to listen to my show and hear me break down 10 different guys on the recruiting trail, whether it's from transfers, whether it's from guys early signing for coming in from high school. You're not going to hear me dive deep into that because that's just not me. That's not what I do. I don't sit here. I don't have the time all day every day to keep up with every move of a high school kid coming to Georgia. I don't have the time to be able to do and keep an eye on all of these transfers and where they're going. Will I get a list together? Absolutely. I'll start to look at some of that stuff and I'll say, okay, we got some pretty good names coming in here. Here's some of this. But I'm doing something completely different with my day job than most of these guys who are out here covering Georgia. So I'll do everything I can to get as much information to you as you can. But as I told you guys from the start of this show, if you're looking for a recruiting podcast and something that you want to listen to that deals with all of that and you want all of that information, I hate to say it because I don't want you to leave, but you're not going to get it from me. I'll tell you again, some of the big names that are coming, and we're excited about them, but that's about as far as it goes, and it's not happening right now. I'll probably revisit it, once we get a little bit closer to early signing day, which is next week. And then again, we have a lot of bowl games that we're going to go through this week too, and we'll break some of those down here just a little bit, looking at some of those. So I may end up coming to you guys next week, at least going over some of the bowl games that happened. And then obviously we'll be previewing at the end of next week, or excuse me, actually next week is not really previewing for anything because we got Christmas, and then we've got another week before Georgia and Ohio State match up there in the semifinal game, the Peach Bowl in Atlanta. So we've got a little bit of time for that. But as far as the recruiting, with transfers and with guys coming in early signing day again. I will look at some of it. I'll try to get some of that information to you guys. But again, I don't dive deep when it comes to recruiting because there's just a ton of it. And Kirby will even tell you, and I'll tell you the same thing, stars don't matter. I'm not saying that they don't. I think in some scenarios, in some situations, they do. I think it means a lot to a high school guy to be considered a 5-star guy, especially if it doesn't get to their head. But Lad McConkey is a 3-star. Darnell Washington was a 5-star, but Brock Bowers, he was not. So stars don't necessarily matter to me all that much. It is a flashy thing to see, and it's what everybody looks at and goes, oh, they got the #1 recruiting class. Well, guess what? So did Texas A&M, and 48% of those guys are in the portal leaving Texas A&M after last year's atrocious season. They're not even bowling this year. So stars don't necessarily make all the difference in a football team, especially from the get-go. So we'll see what happens next year with Texas A&M as far as that class goes. But right now, it ain't looking very good at all. Didn't look good at all this season. Very, very ugly put out for that. So getting to these games that are coming up this week again, starting technically today for you guys that are listening on Friday when this thing usually comes out. Let me see if I can get them pulled up. I was trying to get them pulled up earlier, and it did not work. So give me just a second here, and I'll get it pulled up for us. All right, I believe I got most of them pulled up here, and I'm really just going to kind of touch on some of the big ones again. Friday, December the 16th is the first ones that I'm going to hit out, which really get it rolling. I think there may have technically been some earlier. Really, I think this is what gets it started. It says December 11th technically starts bowl season, but I think this is really when the main ones get started. You do have Miami of Ohio and UAB playing the Hometown Lenders Bahamas Bowl on Friday. That's at 11:30 in the morning, which is crazy. But then you have a bigger one to me, not necessarily bowl name-wise, but a good game matchup is the Duluth Trading Cure Bowl, which is 2 11-2 teams, both ranked 25th and 24th. That's UTSA and Troy playing at 3 o'clock on ESPN. That's a good one. Troy was a favorite in it. UTSA has actually kind of shifted to a 1-point favorite in this one. And I do want to say this as far as bowl games go. Every year I like to do the little Capital One Mania Bowl challenge, just to do it and look at it. And I kind of went through really as soon as the regular season ended, as soon as all of the games were available after all the championship series a couple weeks ago. When all that ended, I like to go and look and see the matchups, and then I like to pick the teams that I think will win the big games and that. I went through it and I did it, and then a week later, after all of these transfers started out, and some of the guys decided they're bowing out, for the NFL draft, and some guys are bowing out for the rest of the season because they don't want to play in the bowl game. I started looking and I was like, man, a lot of the teams that you would think would probably win these games, all of a sudden you're looking going, I don't know if they will, because so much of their star power has either left transferring, is not going to play in this game for the draft, or is just not going to play in general, or is hurt. In some scenarios as well. So I really don't know what's going to happen with this bowl season. This could be one of the wildest bowl seasons, and I'm saying this on technically December 15th for you guys that want to bookmark it and go back to it. I have a feeling this could be one of the wildest bowl seasons we've ever seen, and by that I mean some teams that shouldn't win will probably win, and this is where I'm going to lean the other direction, which I did not just a couple of weeks ago as the country bumpkin comes out here. But I did not lean this way a couple of weeks ago because what I told you guys a couple of weeks ago as far as the college football playoff expanding, it takes away from the regular season by doing that. And it does. I still firmly believe that because you expand the playoffs, it does take away from the regular season. But I will give it this benefit that I had not really thought this much in depth about as far as bowl games go, is it gives us a lot more value to bowl games. I will say that, because the bowl games that you will be playing in this scenario, because they will be bowl games from my understanding, and the teams who are playing in that first round, they have home field advantages based on seeding. But it will make those bowl games matter. You will have guys that don't sit out, and what Smith and Jigba, that wide receiver for Ohio State, yeah, I think we talked about this last week. He's sitting out But that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all because he's been hurt all year. And maybe they were counting on him to come back, but I don't think he's been a factor this season. And I don't think he would have been a factor in this game coming up. There's a couple of other things that have kind of come up with that. But back to what I was talking about, I do think it gives at least a little bit more credit to the expansion of the playoffs with the bowl system. It does make a bowl game matter more. You have a good opportunity for more players to decide to stick around instead of transferring early. You have a good opportunity for players to stick around and not go to the draft just yet and play in these games instead of just kind of opting out for them. So that's the one good thing I do see about it. I'm not going to say it's the only. There's still plenty of time to kind of look and think about different things here and there. But that's one good thing I am looking at as far as the expansion of the playoffs is it does make bowl games more relevant because right now the only games that people truly care about are the four top teams in the country. And that's even if you look at the transfer portal, Georgia's got one guy. Ohio State, I think, has two guys. Michigan might have two guys, and TCU might have two guys, or maybe three. So most all of these guys, and most of those guys that are not playing are either hurt or haven't been starting or haven't been playing for these teams that are top in the country. Where you do have like a Texas A&M who has like 20 guys who are leaving. Alabama has like 16 or 17 guys that are leaving. So there's a ton of guys leaving these other teams that aren't playing. And part of that is because they're not playing. And why would you stick around? And I told you guys the same thing happened last year when Georgia was playing in the playoffs. Georgia didn't have players leaving for the transfer portal. When they played in the national championship game in between those two, players weren't leaving. It's not until Georgia finished the job, they got their rings, they got the national championship, they did what they wanted to do, that is when the players started to leave. Again, Jermaine Burton was playing in the national championship for Georgia a season ago. And now he's sitting at Alabama, sitting at the house, about to go play in, I don't even know what bowl game. We'll get to it here in a minute. Maybe the Sugar Bowl. But anyway, that's what you're kind of looking at is all of a sudden the bowl games, maybe at least a few of them, will matter more and players will stick around more. So that's one good thing about it, I guess, as we move forward into the expansion. Again, regardless, it's coming. One way or another, whether you like it or not, it's coming. So we just have to figure out. You don't have to figure it out. I mean, you don't have to get on board with anything. But again, it's coming regardless. Kind of like Deion Sanders told Colorado, I'm coming. So prepare for it because it's all you can do. Let's roll through a few more of these other bowl games here. Then we move to the Saturday slate. You do have what in the world? The Wasabi Fenway Bowl. Some of these bowl games, I mean, it's gotten crazy. There's so many now that it's just unreal with some of the names. That's why I kind of like reading some of them out. But anyway, Cincinnati, Louisville, that'll be a good one. Saturday, Florida, Oregon State, the SRS Distribution Las Vegas Bowl. Washington State and Fresno State, the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl presented by Stifel. How about that? What a name. What a mouthful for a name for a bowl game. Then you get the Lending Tree Bowl, New Mexico Bowl, Frisco Bowl presented by Serve Pro. SMU, BYU there in the New Mexico Bowl. That one looks like it'd be a pretty good one. Then we move to Monday, which is just crazy. Again, I think now for the next pretty much every day until, other than Christmas, nobody's playing. But every day I'm looking at there's a game until Monday, January 2nd. There'll be 4 games, which is obviously that's some big games. But then there's not another one until the National Championship January 9th. So every day from now until Christmas, and then the day after Christmas till the January 2nd, there's at least one football game playing every day. And that Monday matchup is Marshall and UConn. And then Tuesday you have a couple. You got Liberty and Toledo and the roofclaim.com Boca Raton Bowl. And then you got Eastern Michigan and San Jose State playing in the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. Again, some of these just kind of crack me up. Baylor and Air Force playing Thursday, December 22nd in the Lockheed Martin Armed Forces Bowl. And then we get to Friday, December 23rd, Louisiana and Houston playing in the Radiance Technologies Independence Bowl. Wake Forest and Missouri play that Friday as well, that Friday night. Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl, Saturday, December 24th on Christmas Eve. The Easy Post Hawaii Bowl. MTSU playing San Diego State. Monday, December 26th after Christmas in the Quick Lane Bowl is New Mexico State Bowling Green. Tuesday, December 27th. I'm going to kind of just go through some of the ones that might matter more to us. Georgia Southern and Buffalo in the Camellia Bowl. Coastal Carolina, East Carolina play in the Ticket Smarter Birmingham Bowl. Wisconsin and Oklahoma State in the Guaranteed Rate Bowl. Wednesday, December 28th, UCF and Duke. Kansas, Arkansas play in the AutoZone Liberty Bowl. Oregon and North Carolina playing in the San Diego County Credit Union Holiday Bowl. Texas Tech, Ole Miss in the Texac Texas Bowl. And then we get to Thursday, December 29th. Syracuse, Minnesota in the Bad Boy Mowers Pinstripe Bowl. Oklahoma, Florida State in the Cheez-It Bowl. That'll be a good one. Texas, Washington playing in the Valero Alamo Bowl. And then Friday, December 30th, this is when we start to get to some of the other big ones. Maryland and number 23, NC State in the Duke's Mayo Bowl. Pitt playing number 18, UCLA in the Tony the Tiger Sun Bowl. Number 21, Notre Dame versus number 19, South Carolina Tax Slayer Gator Bowl. Ohio and Wyoming playing in the Barstool Sports Arizona Bowl. And then we get the big one. One of the New Year's Six, the Capital One Orange Bowl. Number 6, Tennessee, and number 7, Clemson. Hello, Orange. Then we get to the big one. Saturday, December 3rd. Georgia and Ohio State in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. College football playoff semifinal game. In the All-State Sugar Bowl, number 5, Alabama, and number 9, Kansas State. In the Music City Bowl, you got Iowa and Kentucky playing. And then in the other semifinal game, the VRBO Fiesta Bowl. Number 3, TCU, and number 2, Michigan. Then you get to Monday, January 2nd. These are the final 4 games before you get to the National Championship Monday, January the 9th. Number 22, Mississippi State playing against Illinois in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Number 16, Tulane versus number 10, USC in the Cotton Bowl. Number 17, LSU and Purdue playing in the Cheez-It Bowl, Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. And then number 11, Penn State playing number 8, Utah in the Rose Bowl. I thought there was another Cheez-It Bowl game that I saw too. Yeah, there it is. The Cheez-It Bowl. Okay, there's a Cheez-It Bowl, which is Oklahoma and Florida State. And then there's a Cheez-It Citrus Bowl, which is LSU Purdue. Anyway, and then again, National Championship will be Monday, January the 9th, 7:30 p.m., ESPN, the AT&T National Championship. That is one that we have said for years now. Why are we playing this game on a Monday? It's January the 9th. It's not New Year's. It's nothing like that. It's a random day for wanting to be off on that Tuesday after, regardless win or lose. And you can't. It's just a random day. But anyways, I digress. I do want to talk about probably the biggest conversation to have and the biggest thing to talk about. And this is where we'll wrap the show up with this tonight. Is like I was saying there, number 22, Mississippi State is going to play Illinois in the ReliaQuest Bowl on Monday, January 2nd on ESPN 2 at 12 o'clock that afternoon, a lunchtime kick. And this is a big game. As many of you know, and if you haven't, this would probably come as a shock to you listening in, but we would just be remiss if we did not mention the passing of Mississippi State head coach Mike Leach on Monday. I saw the news of this break at some point Sunday that he had a medical emergency, that he was apparently taken to the hospital and then life-flighted to Jackson, where he was in critical condition, and just some really sad news to kind of hear on Sunday. And I mean, I can remember all day Sunday, I just kind of kept looking back and seeing if I could find information. And there was one guy who put a lot of information out that I don't think very many people saw. And it was really sad to hear, and I'm not going to repeat it because I don't know the truth of it. As far as in depth of some of the stuff that he had posted, as far as what exactly happened on Sunday. But Monday, it's so strange. When I woke up, the first thing I did was I was like, let me check and see if Mike Leach is okay. And there really not been an update on Monday that anything had happened. That he had passed or that anything had gotten any better. The only news we heard later into the day on Monday morning was that he did apparently have a heart attack, and that he was without oxygen and without any kind of medical attention there for 10 to 15 minutes before they were able to come to his aid. And then obviously move from there, getting him to a hospital, and then obviously getting him to a much larger hospital. And all day Monday, it was the same thing. It was just kind of watching and waiting, hoping that you hear good news, because sometimes they say no news is good news, but I think we can all agree that sometimes no news is not necessarily good news. No news is just no news at the time. And I kind of remembered later into the day on Monday, I was like, man, by Monday night, I kind of started thinking, I was like, okay, if we're not hearing anything right now, maybe nothing's changed. That's the best case scenario. But when I woke up on Tuesday and there was no news at all, there wasn't even an update as far as we're still in critical condition or anything like that, I started to wonder if this wasn't a situation where maybe he had passed. And at that point, you have to call a team meeting. You have to get everybody together to tell them. And I mean, you're talking about, I mean, hundreds of guys in a facility, between players, staff, everything that surrounds a football program, that you have to get to come together. And on top of that, if you've never dealt with something really big like that, there's a lot of guidance that has to be there, guidance counselors and psychiatrists, and there's just a lot that has to be around for something like this. And I remember saying this, I don't think that I've ever seen in my lifetime an active head football coach that has passed. I know a couple of years ago, I think an offensive or defensive line coach there for Kentucky passed, which was very sad. I know even players, sadly have passed in the off season and even in season, and that's a very sad thing. But this is the first time we've seen a head coach who does not just affect, one family or one person. He affects not only the team he is with, but the teams he was formerly with, the people watching, the fans. And it's funny, I was talking to my boss about this the other day. It's amazing how someone I never met, but you watched all of the antics, all of the things that you've watched over the past couple of days since his passing, the SEC network, all of the stuff that they've put out, ESPN talking about him, all of the things that have come out that you watch, where all of these other coaches, players, fans, media members, presidents, ADs, all of these people, analysts come out and they tell you the stories of Mike Leach, and just what a character he was. And it's a sentiment not only to him, but just to everybody around. And it just tells you how much you didn't have to know somebody to know somebody. And you may not have known him perfectly or as in depth as you might have wanted to, but it's still unreal just how much you feel affected by something that happened to someone that you never actually shook hands with or anything. But it's like, wow. That person who was just a constant, who was always around and that you always saw when it came to a game, that you always heard from, you were always excited to see what is his halftime speech going to be, what is his post-game speech going to be, what does his pre-game look like, all of this, because you just never knew. You never knew. Pre-game, walking with a cup of coffee, going to halftime, Molly McGrath chasing him in the Georgia-Mississippi State game to the locker room trying to get a conversation out of him. Had to chase him all the way to the tunnel, walking the entire time. And then after the game, after other games, just some of the antics that he would come out with and some of the things that he would say, he was as true as it came to just being fully authentic. And it's something that you have to love, and you hate that you're going to have to miss it, because it's not there. It's no longer going to be there. And it's such a sad thing, again, for somebody that I've never personally met, but that even Hunter and I, preseason pod that we put out, even the mid-season pod that we put out earlier on, we've touched on Mike Leach and just how much of a character he is, and even watching what was it, the Portraits episode that was done of him down in Key West, and he's just he was such a great coach, mentor, guy that you could possibly know without actually having met face to face. And it's just sad, incredibly sad situation that happened. As soon as news broke for it on Sunday, I was like, wow, that's scary. It's sad. so much unknown there for the next couple of days until obviously the news of his untimely and unfortunate passing there on Tuesday. Coach Mike Leach, at 61 years old, passing there on Tuesday. They did announce, and this kind of goes back to the bowl games, they did announce that they are going to play and that this is to honor him. I mean, what better way than to be going to play in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers stadium in a bowl game where there's going to be a pirate ship in the stadium for the pirate. Swing your sword, the pirate Mike Leach, leaving his legacy behind. What a way to go out with the team still playing in this bowl game, playing for Coach Mike Leach. It's going to be such a hard sight to see, but such a good sight to see when that time comes. And I was reading where his last quote-unquote charitable donation was that he donated his organs, to be utilized for others that were in need, and he could help in that way as a last kind of charity. And again, just such a terribly sad situation. I hate to end the show on that, but again, we'd be remiss if we just glazed over it, and that's kind of why I wanted to save it for the end of the show, because just a tough thing in general to kind of go over. But rest in peace to the Pirate, Coach Mike Leach. Just what a great guy. And I wanted to get a bunch of clips together and put them up to end the episode here and the show. But I just, unfortunately, hadn't had the time. Again, it's kind of getting close to Christmas time and busy time. So I've been running around with all that. But I may end up throwing some of that in at some point. So if you hear it here at the end of the episode, great. If not, you know why. But we're going to jump out of here, and I may check in with you guys next week where we kind of catch up on some of the bowl games from this past week, or this week moving forward until next week. But if you don't hear from me, then just know, okay, all that's really happened is bowl games. We don't have a ton to talk about, and we'll talk after Christmas. But either which way, you guys make sure you follow us on Twitter at DogTalk20. Subscribe to YouTube. Like I said, there's not a visual aspect to YouTube. I will still put this episode up on YouTube, just audio. So I really appreciate you guys listening, and I will check in with you guys next week or at whatever point in time we decide to come back to this thing. Go Dogs.